All right, so you're ready to continue on with the yoke of your sweater. We've completed the collar and we're ready for the next step, which is to create the yoke portion and to make increases that go over your shoulder and, you know, to make room for the sleeves and the bigger part of the body of the sweater. So let's get to it. All right, we finished the collar and now let's take a look at the next section where we're going to the yoke. It says first you'll knit across the collar stitches and then pick up stitches along the edge of the collar, the side with the 2 stockinette stitches. So that's this edge here. Okay, so we're going to knit across the right side, then we're going to pick up stitches across the edge, and then we're going to get rid of our, chain provisional cast on, so we have live stitches that we can knit back down. Then we can start knitting this yoke back and forth like this. Okay, so that makes sense, right? All right, where was I reading? I interrupt myself all the time. Okay, then work across the live stitches. Next, you will set up and begin to increase at 4 raglan increase points and at the neckline. So what we're going to do is, if you look at here, these lines are where we're going to have increase spots in order to make the yoke bigger and then to accommodate the sleeves. All right, so it's really not as complicated as it might seem. Let's just do it step by step together. So where we left off, we ended with a wrong side row. So now we're going to skip here and we're going to, on the right side, we're going to knit to the last 2 stitches and place a marker. Okay, let's just stop there for a second. Okay, so we're on the right side row. Let me arrange myself here. Right side row, we're just going to knit across, and before we get to the last 2 stitches, and then we're going to put a marker right there. Now I'm going to use a color of marker that's different from the others I'm intending to use because I've read ahead in the pattern a little bit, and I know that this marker will just indicate what our garter stitch section for the edge of the sweater is going to be. So if you have a contrasting color that's different from the rest of your markers, then do that. If not, no worries, it will become clear. I just did that because I find it convenient as I'm going along. So we knitted to the last 2 stitches, we placed the marker, and now the instructions say to knit 1, make 1, knit 1. Now, I choose to make one a little bit differently than the author of the pattern. I like to use the lifted increases. I'll put a link to that in the upper right hand corner of the screen here. She uses a lifted bar increase, but I like a different type of increase where you go down and grab a leg of the stitch down a row below. I think that makes a little bit more of a seamless increase, but you do whichever increase you prefer. I'll put a link in the video description below, but also in the upper right hand corner of this video where I show various types of increases and why I prefer the ones that I do. So look for that. All right, so this is, then in parentheses it says this is the end of the row. So we've made one here and that's the end of this garter stitch row. Now it says turn work 90 degrees and pick up and knit however many stitches you need to do for the size of sweater you're knitting. Now I'm going to need to pick up 90 stitches at a rate of 3 stitches for every 4 rows. So all that simply means is I'm going to go along here and I'm going to pick up 3 stitches for every 4 rows of garter stitch knitting, or 3 stitches I'm picking up for every 2 garter ridges or columns. All right, so I've picked up about 10 stitches, and I wanted to just kind of show you how I'm going about this. There seems to be some more obvious places than others to to poke in your needle and pick up stitches. You kind of have to just work that out and do what you think is best for your size. I have 90 of these to pick up, but I'll tell you, I'm trying to do it kind of evenly across the top, but if it works out to be a little bit wonky at the end, or if I have the wrong number of stitches, I can adjust for that on the next row, because I'm just going to do a setup row and I'm going to knit to a marker. I can adjust for that. I can either, if I pick up one or a couple too many, I can purl them together when I come back the other direction. It's nice to do this as evenly as possible because it's something that you may or may not notice, so you need to kind of be careful. But you know what, if you're one off, I would not tear it out. We can adjust for that. If you're If you're 10 off, then that's a different matter. You're going to want to do your spacing differently if you're that many stitches off. So just go along and see if you can, you know, sort out a little rhythm or places to pick up that you think make sense for the number of stitches that you have. And then we'll take it from there. And I'll show you how I'm going to adjust if I'm a little bit off in my count. I'm finished picking up stitches all the way across this top edge. Now, remember I said this is the part where we're going to unzip this and we're going to put our live stitches onto the left-hand needle. So not this one, but the other end. Let me get my row counter. The other end, we're going to put these provisional cast on stitches onto the left hand needle. So in order to do that, we need to remove our crochet chain zip thing. So we're going to do that super carefully. I'm going to just pick out the tail. All right, this is going to be, you just want to take this easy and slowly, okay? And you can see how this is going to unzip. Let's see how this will work here. So you can see that when I pull this, I'm going to end up with this coming off. Now, although the instructions say to put it on my left-hand needle, when it comes off, I'm probably going to want to put it on a different needle and then transfer it, or go ahead and put it on the right one just so that I don't lose it. So what I'm going to do, I think, is go ahead and get another stitch marker. This one's a little big, but it will serve the purpose. So I'm going to get another stitch marker so I know where the difference is between the stitches I just picked up and the stitches I'm about to release from the provisional cast on. So when I take this out, can you see that first loop right here? I'm going to go ahead and just tuck that on there so that I know that I won't drop it. Then I'm going to pop that first stitch off. Now you can see the next one's coming up right there. So I'm going to tuck my needle in under, and I'm going to go ahead and pull that and release that one off as well. Now I'm not sure why that's curled under there. Probably, but that's all right. I can get that loose easily enough. I can pick that out, and then we'll see if we can unzip it, if it continues to unzip properly, or if I'm going to have that problem the whole way along. I don't think so, though. This was the tail from before. I'm just tucking that back in under there, okay? So now you can see where that next one's going to be. I'm just going to tuck that needle under there so I don't lose it, and I'm going to go ahead and release that off. Okay, that's working pretty well. Again, I'm going to go into the right side of that, grab a hold of it, and let that go. So I'm just going to continue down my 16 stitches in that way. And then I will put them back on the left-hand needle so we can knit across them in a moment. But I'm going to go ahead and do this. And it just seemed easier to me to go ahead and put them on the right side. If you had, if you even had an extra double-pointed needle or something. Okay, so you can see we're down to the end of this. That's my first slip knot. And there's my last stitch. Yay. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull that through. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and slip all these back on. And you know what? These are twisted. I'm going to untwist them as I go. I don't know if you can tell that they're twisted or not, because you want to have the front leg of your stitch, you want to have that front leg to the right. And you can see that that is not the case with these. So I am simply twisting them back off as I place them on the left needle. So it's always good to recognize if you had some twisted stitches. All right, let me finish up with this, and then we'll look back and see where we are in the instructions. I had that marker here. Now I know, whoopsie, I should have 16 here. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Okay, now I can take this away. That was just a temporary marker for me. Okay, let's check where we are here. Okay, finally, undo the provisional cast on and put live stitches onto the left-hand needle. We did that. We just kind of did it our own way. Work across them as follows. Knit one, make one, knit one, place marker. Okay, knit one, make one, knit one, place marker. So knit one, and I'm gonna make one using my lifted right leaning increase right there. Make one, and then knit another one, and I'm gonna place the marker. And again, I have a bright green one. All that does is indicate the beginning and ending of your garter stitch. 6, 8, 10, 12. All right, and I'm just making sure that I have the same number of garter stitches that I have on the other side. All right, after you knit one, make one, knit one, and then we place our marker, and then you're just simply gonna knit to the end of this garter stitch row. Okay, so now the next portion, the next little paragraph just indicates how many total stitches you should have. Now for mine, it says I need to have a total count of 124. I'm pretty sure I have 2 or 3 extra because I picked up 1 or 2 more than I maybe needed to along the collar. But I'm happy with the spacing that I got, so I'll adjust that here in a moment. Okay, so now we're going to turn our work. This is our setup row, and this is where I'm going to have the opportunity to adjust my count if I need to. All right, so you're going to knit to the marker, purl 3, and place another marker. Okay, knitted to that first marker. Now I'm going to purl 3, including one of the ones I made. And now I'm going to put just a regular marker in here. Just a regular, you know, it's a little different. That just indicates the beginning of my garter stitch, so I don't purl where I should knit and knit where I should purl and mess up my garter stitch border there. Okay, now for my particular pattern, I'm going to purl 21. So if you need to adjust how many stitches you have picked up along there, in my case I picked up probably 1 or 2 too many, so I might choose to purl a couple of these together in the center. I probably won't do it right now. I might do it in the middle or wherever seems convenient. As I'm going along, I'm kind of checking my spacing of these, and if I see 2 that are inordinately close together, like there's a couple that could go together, I might just do 1 right there. And then I'm also going to double count and just make sure that I have, you know, how this paragraph indicates how many stitches you should have between your markers. And so I'll let you sort that out depending on the number of stitches you picked up in reference regarding the size that you're making. All right, now I'm going to do the biggest portion across the back. For me is 48 stitches. So what we're doing here is we're just placing markers and I'm adjusting my stitch count. So this is the, you know, the front edge, and then this is going to be some little neckline increases here along the front edge. Then this whole portion is going to be the top of the sleeve or the shoulder. And then now I'm working on the middle of the back section. And so for me, I'm going to have 48 stitches along the middle of the back. And then you'll have your other, we're just spacing things out. We're just marking, delineating where the sections of our pattern or our yoke are going to be. So just follow along and do exactly what it tells you. Adjust your stitch counts if necessary. Now is when you want to do that. And then we'll finish up our setup row at the bottom of page 2. So now we're going to get down to it with the Raglan increase points. And row 1, RS is right side. So you're going to knit to the first marker. Okay, we knitted to the first marker, and we'll move that over. And then it says we want, in brackets there, it says we want to knit to 1 stitch before the Raglan marker. So that's this one. So this will increase. I know there's only 2 of them right now, but these instructions are going to serve you for many, many rows. And so they have to kind of write it generically rather than repeat it a whole bunch of times. So you're going to knit to 1 stitch before the Raglan marker. Now we're going to make 1. So now this is where I'm going to try to be careful about making 1 leaning whichever way I want. So if you'll notice back here on page 6, I believe, the author of the pattern indicates she makes the stitch using your preferred method. She uses the paired increases, a make 1 right before the marker and a make 1 left after the marker. That's going to make this is going to become a center of where your increases are to the right and to the left. So we're going to have our increases lean away from the markers. This is going to be a make 1 right. So using the lifted increases that I prefer, we're going to go under here and pick up this leg of this stitch down below, put it on the left needle, and simply knit into that. Okay, so there's our make 1. knit one, move the marker, knit one, and now we're going to make one that leans to the left. So we want to perform that increase in the same row. We just knitted the top one, and now we're going to pick up this one here. And if you'll notice, it looks like the stitch is twisted. So we're going to simply knit into the back of it and then turn it 180 degrees and reorient that correctly onto the needle. So then we made one. Okay, don't worry. I'll show you that several more times as we go along. But that is the ending of the first bracketed portion of row 1. We're going to do that 4 times over because we're going to do that on the outside, on each side of each of these next 3 markers, 4 times total. Okay, so now if we go back to the beginning of the bracket, we're going to knit to 1 stitch before our next marker. And then we're going to do an increase, a make one, knit 2, make one. So we're making one by inserting the needle into the leg of the stitch below, lift it up and put it on your left needle and simply knit right into that. Okay, and now we're going to knit 2. This is our center of that whole increase portion. Okay, and then we're going to go down and grab this one, lift it up and knit into the back loop of that so that we twist it back the proper way. And then it will be seated on the needle properly when we purl back the other way for row 2. All right, I'll show you that a couple more times. Okay, again, I've knitted to 1 stitch before the marker, and I'm going to make one right. So I'm picking up that leg of the stitch below, lift it up and knit right into it. Then I'm going to knit 2, the 2 stitches that are next to the marker, and now I'm going to make one left. So I'm going to go down to the row below and knit into the back. Okay, so I'm going to do that one more time on this first right side row in my Raglan markers. So this is just my shorter section to get over here. All right, again, knitted to 1 stitch before, grab the leg of the stitch below and knit into that, knitting 2 and moving the marker, and then we're going to do our left leaning increase, which is grabbing the leg of the stitch below and knitting into the back of that. Okay, now you're done with that part, and it says you're going to knit to the end. We're just simply moving this. We're not doing anything with that marker because we're knitting, so we're just knitting right to the end. Now during that whole row, we have increased a total of 8 stitches. Okay, so the next row, you're going to knit to the first marker, which will be your garter stitch border edge, and then you're going to purl across the back of the sweater. So we're just maintaining the integrity of the garter stitch border, and we're going to purl our way back. So that's all row 2 is, so that's super easy. And then row 3 is not very different at all. We're just throwing in one more increase. I'll show you that when we get there. All right, it's row 2 still, and I've purled my way across the back, and I'm just switching, and I'm going to knit the last, well, for me it's 14 stitches for my garter stitch border, and then I'll be ready to begin row 3. Okay, row 3 says knit to the first marker, which you're always going to do that to maintain the integrity of your border here. And then the only difference between row 3 and row 1 is that they've put in a couple of extra increases, and I believe that's the only difference. So let's look. Row 3 is knit to the first marker, then we're going to knit 2 and make 1. So we're going to end up making one in this little tiny section that we have here. So we knitted to the first marker, slide that over, knit 2, and make 1. Now it doesn't specify whether that's going to lean right or left, so just do whichever you find easiest. I always think making it from the right is easier because I don't have to remember to knit into the back loop. Okay, so knit 2, make 1. Did that, and now we're going to knit to 1 stitch before the Raglan marker, which in our case is still only 1 stitch here, but we're 1 before the marker. Now we're going to make another one And then we're going to carry on with our raglan increases around these markers just as we did before. Okay, and now I'm going to make one left because I want the left leaners after the marker. And then we're just going to knit to the next marker and carry on like we were. So the only difference between rows 3 and row 1 is that you're having a couple of extra increases in those small sections near the neckline here. All right, once we do our last raglan increase, the instructions say to knit until you get to 2 stitches before the last marker. So that's here. And then we're going to make one and knit to the end. So right here, we're just going to make one again. I'm going to choose to make this a left leaner since I kind of want it to point to the outside edge. For some reason, that appeals to me. This is Simon. He thinks he's helping. And then it just says knit to the end. So there you have it. And then row 4 is simply the same as row 2, where we're just going to knit through our garter stitch section and then purl across the rest till we get to the other side and knit that garter stitch edge. And that's it. So super simple, really. All you're going to want to do is keep track. The instructions say that you're going to work rows 1 through 4 a total of, X number of times depending on which size you're knitting. So you're going to want to keep track on a little post-it note or a clicker thing. I just make hash marks on the border of my page indicating my sets of 4. And then I know when I've done enough sets to move on to the next portion. Work on that until you have your total number of stitches. You'll want to verify the count after you've completed your prescribed sets of 4. After you've knitted those 4 rows over and over and over for the prescribed number of times. So for me, I repeated those 4 rows 8 times, a total of 32 rows. And I have something that looks like this. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, what you're seeing here is also includes row 5 through 8 because I was in the camper and I had to keep knitting and I couldn't stop and I couldn't video 5 through 8 because I was in the camper. But that's only the last 4 rows really. So from my thumb down is the 30 some odd rows, 32 rows that I had, because I repeated that 4 row section 8 times. So you can see this is the neckline. This ended up being that tiny small section that we had for the neckline increases. And then this is a sleeve. This will become the left sleeve. And then we have the whole portion across the back, which is now like 80 something stitches. And then the right sleeve and the right neckline increase. And of course the cat thinks it's so lovely. And then, so when I turn this, so you can actually see what it would look like going the right direction. The cat's not happy with me doing that. This would be the back. And that's just lovely. So, work through that, rows 5 through 8. Let me show you, super simple, which is why I didn't feel the need to video all of that. It's really easy because it's all the same stuff. Row 5 is just knitting. Row 6 is knit to the marker and then purl to the last one, knit to the end. And row 7 is just an increase. You're only increasing 2 stitches in the same way as we have been. And row 8 is just knitting, purling, and knitting. So when you're done with this whole yoke section, you'll have a total number of stitches. Mine's 270. Make sure to double count that. I double count when it gets to, okay, cat butt on the sweater. Okay, let me try to zoom out here a little bit so you can see. So this view would be, this is the top of the collar and the back. So this would be as if I'm going to wear it. So right side, right sleeve, back, left sleeve, and left neckline. All right, you guys, thanks for hanging in there this week and being patient, even though I was gone and it took me an extra day or so to get this video uploaded. So check it out, it's starting to look like an actual sweater. So you've completed, after this week, you will have completed the yoke portion, or 2 weeks, or however long it takes you. I keep telling people there's no behind. You get to it when you get to it, and these videos will be here for you indefinitely. So we're done with the yoke part, and now we're ready to separate off for the sleeves, and that'll be the next episode of our Harvest Cardigan knit-along. So as always, be sure to like and subscribe. Holler if you have any questions, put comments down below, or join us on our Facebook and Ravelry groups. We'd love to have you there also. All right, thanks for watching.